These are glass pieces made by Barron Creek Glassworks in Westville, Oklahoma. Yes, we've shown you other glass blowers, but this artist has a special technique he uses that caught our attention, and we wanted to share it with you. I'm Julie Robbins. Welcome to Expressions. With us now is Sherry Blankenship, and Sherry, you are the co-owner of Barron Creek Glassworks here, is that right?
Right.
And your husband Ron does all the main work, I should say. You kind of sell the product, don't you?
He's the main hands-on. I assist and input on design, and we talk about color and all of that, which is, we're known for our color.
Oh, you have some beautiful work, which we're going to see here in just a second. But first of all, tell us how both of you got involved in this.
Ron had been involved in glass since he was an art major in college. He was a very good painter. He had talents in other directions, but got exposed to glass and got the Glass Jones and pursued it wherever he could. And that's not an easy thing to do, but he started apprenticing in Arkansas, and then has gone to California and other places. So he had been blowing glass for about 17 years when we met. In Fayetteville, Arkansas. I was teaching nursing at the University of Arkansas for 11 years.
Oh wow, this is totally different than teaching nursing.
It's a totally change of career. Although I'd always been interested in visuals and design. So we fell in love and got together, and Barron Creek Glassworks was born, and all of the fancy stuff was born.
And how long ago was this?
That was 6 years ago, going on our 7th year of our own studio. What we're seeing through here is feathered elegance in the cobalt and white and the green and white in various forms. There's enchanted forest, which kind of has an impressionism. It really came from some of our early work of some pieces we called fairy forest, and then we changed the term to it, and the blue-green was the most popular, and we've stuck with that, and we keep expanding. I'm drinking out of a pansy garden, or a Tiffany pansy, for the see-through effect.
Yeah, you really blew me away when you poured something in that. I was like, oh, you can't drink out of that. You just look at it, right?
Oh, yeah. But the thing is, our formula is very sturdy. In fact, the sand that we melt, Ford Motor Company buys sand from the same place to make safety glass.
Oh, okay.
Very sturdy formula.
And it is dishwasher safe?
Yes, our glasses are. Now, I don't put the stacked stemwork in there, but the tumblers like you're drinking out of are fine in the dishwasher. I gave all my normal things to Goodwill, and this is all we use. All the normal things that most people, and why not? You enjoy your artwork every time you take a drink.
Good use.
Pansy Garden has become one of our hugely popular series. It is 5 to 7 layers of color. We're known about everything you can do with glass color. Molten wraps, pieces of color, glass powder color are all found in Pansy Garden. This is Golden Midnight, is what I named this series. And these are some rather large pieces here, probably the largest he's ever made, actually, without an assistant. This has iris gold in it too, that amber color, and that's quite expensive. This starts with a pure black liner. And then we start layering and layering the color. That's what we're known for, is this complex color layering. These things will take your breath away out, and even with natural light on it.
Well, so does this seashell here. Well, you know, and I was kind of touching inside thinking this was stiff, and it's real sand in there.
Yeah, it really is. We like to play with the optics and play with people's visual interest in our glass. The story of the shells, shells began Ron had been working on the concept even before we met. It took him about 7 years of periodically thinking, now how can I create a tunnel in glass and achieve some realism on a shell? After we got together in the studio rolling, he finally accomplished it in crude form at the 7th year, and then it became almost gorgeous, and people mistake these for real shells. Now, these are 50 layers of glass color. And
50 layers?
50, a separate color palette on the interior than the outside. And this is a piece called Poseidon's Palace that evolved with the controlled bubble trails. And while we're on a paperweight, I might as well show you one of our fine trademarks. The bottom of our pieces have no pontil mark, meaning that's where it is attached to the blowpipe or the rod when Ron's making the piece. We melt the shards in there at the completion of making the piece. There's no grinding, and this is quite unique from anyone else's glass. This is ancient Venetian style. We were only able to begin this skill level wise early last year. Some crude forms of Murini, which is what you're seeing here and which are on your drinking glass. This is an ancient Venetian technique, 15th century Venice. There was a few pieces that they found in early Roman glass even before that, maybe a decal looking piece or two in some of that very ancient Roman glass. And you're going to get to see that in action. That's today on, we're going to make some sunflower Murinis today. Our stack stem work is something that other people are quite impressed with, other glass blowers. This is all continuous hot work. There is no glue. All of these wafers and balls require one rod. So when he's making this piece, he will go through about 4 to 5 different blowpipe rods making the whole piece.
My goodness.
And again, there's no pontil mark, no grinding. And the pieces are
beautiful pastel colors.
This is called Dixie's Dream. Dixie was a dog, and she, or if I can find her color, she was a yellow lab, and she passed on as Ron's best friend, and we made a funeral urn for her. And that's it has nothing to do with the South, it's a dog. We've been working with optics, again, gazing chambers, and this is a sunflower Murini. These have 13 petals, so you're going to see that to come up when he gets to work here.
I love that perfume bottle.
The perfumes in all of our pieces are, again, finally finished. We have 5 facets on the stopper. We finish it like a gemstone. And then the gazing chamber, where the field of flowers is projected on up into the chamber of the piece.
It's gorgeous. Let's turn it so you can, the viewers can see on the inside.
Right, you looked down the center a while ago. It's a pretty neat view. Again, it changes the optics.
I don't know if they can see it or not. I hope they can. It's just hard to see everything on television. You really have to see this stuff, firsthand. It's gorgeous. It is gorgeous. And we're going to get to see Ron make this, right?
Yes, he's going to make this. He may, I'm not sure we've had the final decision. He may try the paperweight also. Now this has a faceted top and 2 different gazing chamber changes where you alter the way it looks by your optic facet there.
Well, there is a lot of thought gone into this before you actually start, isn't there?
Yes.
It's what you want to do, what colors you want to use.
Exactly, right. Right now we're thinking the challenge for our patrons is to think about what our new work for 2000 is going to be, and we have an annual event and focus on that. And so we're scheming on colors and design right now, and it usually happens around this time of the year.
Well, speaking of scheming, let's go check out what your husband's doing.
Okay. All right.
Well, with us now is Ron. Ron, thank you for being on the program.
You're welcome.
And we've already heard all about you from your wife, and I understand you do the real work, right?
Well, I'm the production end, she's marketing.
Okay, all right. So you both do a lot of work.
Yes, we do. We make a good team.
Well, now tell us, we just came from the sunflowers.
Right.
Now you're going to have to tell me, what was it called again? A
Murini.
Murini.
Right. That's the individual wafer after the bar has been cut. What we'll do, here are some of these sunflower Murinis.
Oh, okay.
And that's the finished flower. So what I'm going to show you now is how we go from the large bars of color to creating the individual pieces that go together to make the Murini.
Okay.
All right.
All right. Let's get started.
Okay. Now the first thing I'll do is take a gather on this rod. Come back to my bench over here.
Okay.
Right where you're standing. Oh yeah, that's all right. I'll be aware of where you are and let you know where I am.
You know, we've done this on other shows, and I know this sort of thing. Not exactly this, obviously, but that is very hard to do.
It is.
To keep it cool, to keep it smooth, and glass gets heavy, really heavy.
Well, when you start with raw sand, that's where your weight comes from. You know, it's just pure silica, primarily is what you're starting with. Okay, this is the post I will be building the pedal on.
Okay.
Now, if you'll move aside and let me hang this here.
All right. Grabbing some color.
That is the solid chunk of color that I'll be making the pedal from. I'll drop this on top of the bar of color. This is just as a pickup point here. Okay, now back to my original rod. The reason I did that is to allow this to cool so that during the heating process it doesn't distort while I'm trying to get this bar hot enough to squeeze into the pedal form. Now I will have to reheat, and it's a very slow, lengthy process. So we'll be here a few minutes just allowing this thing to heat up enough so that it doesn't shatter.
Ron, how hot is the, this is called a glory hole, not a furnace, but a glory hole, okay.
It's probably around 2400 in there. You want to have it pretty hot so that you don't spend all day long in there waiting for it to reach the temperature. This piece I've been working on is just about temperature now, so what I'm going to do is come out, reestablish the cylinder, and then I squeeze it into the pedal form. So that's going to be one very large sunflower pedal. All right, now what I'm going to do is encase this in the molten clear glass. That will make it stretch more evenly than it would if I were to try to just pull the pure color. And also, you don't want a very large gather over the clear. You have to pick up quite a bit to encase it. But to not have too thick a gather, we simply allow it to strip off.
So I guess that glass in the water is not reusable, is it?
Yes, it is.
Oh, is it?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay.
Now I'll reestablish, make sure the pedal form is still in its proper shape. I also want it to cool just a little bit and then reheat before I do the pulling. It will create a much more uniform pull. So we're almost ready with this guy. Wait until it's the right temperature. If I start pulling too soon, you don't get a uniform pull out of it.
Oh, look at that.
The reason I'm going up and down like that is to allow gravity to assist as much as possible.
Right, as I know by experience, glass is very tough to pull.
It can be. It's strictly a matter of reading the temperature. And timing is the key. I mean, you simply can't learn to blow glass unless you learn how to work with the glass when the glass is ready. It's not the type of thing you can force.
What are you going to do now?
All right, now as soon as it stiffens, I'm going to embed it in vermiculite, which is an insulator. It simply keeps it from cooling so quickly that it cracks.
Well, Ron, this looks like a miniature frying pan. What are you going to do with that?
Right. Well, this is going to be used to set up the sunflower. Now that we've pulled the petals and they've cooled, what I do is cut them to size. Of course, I've done the same thing as far as just making the core of the sunflower from a solid bar of brown glass.
So using hot glue?
Using hot glue into the cast iron skillet. Start with the core, and then we align the flowers around the core. Again with the hot glue.
So you get to build, don't you?
So you get to play, right, right.
And I guess the hot glue doesn't hurt the cast iron then.
Oh no, no, it will burn away as we heat the flour up before we actually begin the process of pulling the flour. So we just continue that until we have all of our petals arranged around the core of the sunflower. And then to prevent it from losing its shape as it heats up, I will pour just a very fine ground clear glass around the base of it, because when the hot glue melts away, the petals would fall if it didn't have something to support it. Okay. And the clear glass won't show up when I pick it up, it melts in. Okay, now that we have the sunflower in the annealing oven to heat it up so that it doesn't shatter, what I'll do is pick up the sunflower. Here we have it with the very fine ground glass to hold the petals into place. Okay. Now I have to encase that into molten glass before we can actually pull it. Now I want to try to get as much of this glass into the petals and around in between the petals. That's to try to prevent air pockets.
Boy, it's really hard to see that that's glass, you know? Right. It's so smooth.
So I'll press that down to fully encase the flour as much as possible.
Now what is this doing, Ron?
This is to transfer it to my rod so that now I can do the same process that I did with the individual petals, which is a matter of reheating over and over and over again until I can get a nice uniform cylinder with the sunflower encased in the middle of it. Now that I have the sunflower completely encased in the clear glass and rolled down to a taper, I can begin the pulling process to pull the Murini canes. And that works the same way it did when I was pulling just the single petals. A little quench to keep it from thinning too much. And I've got to time it so that it doesn't get too thin on my pull.
All right, so you're going to just cut it off like you did before?
Now I cut it off like I did before, and that sunflower maintains its shape and its spacing throughout the entire pull of cane. Now back into the vermiculite to cool it, to allow it to cool slowly. Now that we have our pull of sunflower canes cool, then we can cut it into the individual Murinis to be added to the blown vessel.
Now notice you don't measure the sizes, so they just...
Well, I'm using my finger as a guide. Okay. For the thickness is the most important. The more uniform the thickness is, the more easily picked up it can be on when you're trying to pick them up. And there you have the finished flowers.
All right, now what are we doing?
I'm about ready to pick up the sunflowers. This is the core of the perfume bottle.
Yeah, as people can see, this is what we're making.
It's upside down right now, so I'm going to put the sunflowers on top of there, but first I have a hot gather on top of that in order to pick them up.
Okay. Oh, and who's your pal here?
This is Pumpkin. He's my buddy. He helps me in the shop.
And Pumpkin doesn't seem to mind you moving around in all the heat, does he?
Oh, he knows the routine. Now, I'll need to reheat this before I pick up the sunflowers. It would be hot enough as it is, but where I cut it off with the shears, there's a slight indentation, and if I tried to pick up the sunflowers right now, there would be a bubble that would be trapped in there where I cut it. So this smooths that out and eliminates the bubble, and it also allows it to get really hot so I don't miss any of the sunflowers when I make contact with them. And of course, I have the flowers set up on a hot plate underneath here to prevent them from shattering from the thermal shock.
What are the darker pieces there?
Now that will be the base. If I don't put a background color underneath these sunflowers, it doesn't give a visual background for it.
Oh, okay.
And they seem to be floating more than they are against a background. So it just allows a little more of a visual definition to them. Now these are ready. I'll do the same process to pick up my background color. As you can see, there are creases where I dropped each one of those adds for that. Now I'm going to have to reheat it several times and keep rolling and smoothing until I completely eliminate that and have a nice homogeneous vessel on the end, and then I can go in for my final gather.
You get a pretty good size piece of glass for this.
It's a pretty good one, right?
Okay, explain that process right there.
That, well, I was just enlarging the bubble. That will be the reservoir for the perfume bottle. Now I flatten the bottom. I had worked it as long as I could without it becoming too stiff to manipulate, and that's why I have to come back in and reheat again. And when I come out, then I will establish the neckline of the perfume bottle with my jacks. And see, I'm cutting into about half of that bubble, so I'll have to blow it out again. And again with the bubble. I can't see how big a bubble I'm getting, so I just have to feel the amount of air that I blow into it and then take a visual check. Because usually when things are on the end of the blowpipe and you're blowing, you can't see what's going on.
Right. That's pretty good size.
Uh-huh. Now it'll shrink again when I go back to reheat. But as you can see, the sunflowers are already reflecting off the bottom of the bubble, which is the optics that we like to play with. That's the thing about glass, is it really has a lot of three-dimensionality to it beyond actually being a three-dimensional piece. So another reheat, and then I should be able to get the neckline established and transfer to my putty and finish the piece. This transfer can be a fairly tricky part. If your putty's too hot, then you won't be able to tap it off when the whole thing's finished. And if it's too cold, the whole thing might just fall on the ground when you try to transfer it. First, you want to make sure you're absolutely on center with it. I'll chill the neckline a bit, and then establish a score line, and hopefully get an even break when I tap it. Good break. Now, if all goes well, this will be the last time I have to reheat it. I can finish the lip, tap it off, polish the bottom, and then into the annealing oven.
Does everything that touches the glass have to be wet?
No, not wet. The newspaper does. The jacks actually have beeswax on them, this tool I'm using here. So now I've established a nice round hole, flatten the lip. And that will be the finished bottle.
It's beautiful.
Now to tap it off and fire polish the bottom. And what that does is gives it a complete finish so that I don't have to deal with the grinding and polishing the next day. Go into the annealing oven.
And voila!
And that's the piece.
All right.
Okay, the next stage is to finish the stopper for the bottle. First, we quench our rod to get any of the carbon off from the preheating process, and that will help eliminate the possibility of trapping bubbles in this gather. Now it's just a matter of waiting for the temperature to reach just the right state that it will drip slowly from the rod without hopefully dripping all the way to the floor and maintaining a nice rounded bulb on the end.
Now, how do you know what size will fit the artwork?
Actually, I don't. What I do is make just a whole series of stoppers, and I have a whole bag of them to choose from, and then after we make the perfume bottles, we sort through the stoppers to decide which one best suits that bottle. And I can cut the length of the stopper the same way I was cutting the sunflower canes. So the length isn't important. It's mainly the diameter and the taper of the stopper. And after we're sure we've got it nice and straight,
Oh, that's a pretty one.
and then it's just a matter of tapping it off into the annealing oven, and then the next day we can size it for the bottle and do the finished carving. And that was that.
And voila, you're done. That's great. Ron, thank you so much for being on the program.
well,
We
you're
really
welcome.
appreciate this. Do a wonderful job. And please thank your wife, Sherry.
We will.
She's very lovely. And we hope you've enjoyed this episode of Expressions at the Barron Creek Glassworks studio. We'll see you next week.